Hello and welcome to another episode of the Intentional Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Campion, and I am fired up to be bringing you this conversation today with Jon Sherman. If you don't know Jon, he is a phenomenal golf instructor and author of several books, a coach to PGA Tour professionals, and a prolific creator of some of the best golf-related content you can find online these days. I came across Jon's work on Twitter and just started going down the rabbit hole of his content because I found it so engaging, easy to understand, and just incredibly valuable for helping me to do something that I'm trying to do, which is improve my golf game. This conversation focuses mainly around Jon's excellent book, The 4 Foundations of Golf, which I cannot recommend highly enough. Our goal in this conversation, as you'll hear, was really to provide you with 4 or 5 tangible takeaways that you could use starting today in your own golf game. I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation, but before we get to it, just a quick reminder that I recap all of these conversations in my newsletter, also called Intentional Wisdom. And for this one, I'm going to write up the strategies and tactics that I've learned from Jon that I've personally found to be the most valuable in my own golf game. So head on over to gregcampion.substack.com to subscribe and make sure you don't miss that one. With that, here is my conversation with Jon Sherman. All right, Jon Sherman, welcome to the podcast.
Greg, what's up, man? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I'm so psyched to have you on. I've been spending a lot of time binging your content recently, and you've put out so much great stuff. So it's really cool to have you here and talk about it. So, I think the main basis of our conversation today is going to be talking basically about how to get better at golf, which is something that you are an expert on. You're publishing books on the topic. You co-host a podcast on the topic. You produce courses. You've got an awesome website. So I think I have the right man for the job. So actually what I'm hoping to do is like by the end of this conversation, and I think this will be easy for us to accomplish given all the value that I've personally gotten out of your work. But I'm hoping people can like walk away from this conversation and have 4 or 5 things that they could be like, okay, that I can like legitimately try in the next week or so. So yeah, I just want to give you the heads up. That's where I'm hoping to go.
I'm with you. Every time I put something out there, I'm hoping to create simple takeaways because it drives me nuts when you read something or listen to something and you just come away with it with kind of like a fuzzy mind. So let's have that mutual goal.
Cool. And I'll tell you this, like when I was reading your book, so I want to base a lot of our conversation off of your book, The 4 Foundations of Golf, which I've just finished. And you do have a new book out, The Foundations of Winning Golf. So we can talk about all of that. But one of the things that I loved about The 4 Foundations of Golf is that it's written in such an approachable way. And that's something as like a content producer myself, someone who's self-published a couple of books as well. Like my whole process is basically writing how you speak. And as I was reading your book, and now granted, I did both the audio and the print version because I wanted to make sure I highlighted everything that I thought was like so valuable. But that's the feeling I got when I was reading your book. I was like, okay, this is just like very straightforward. It's presented in a very readable, understandable fashion. And then you've got sections at the end of each chapter that remind you what you just told us. So thank you for organizing the book in such a manner.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for saying that. That's probably the highest compliment you could give my work because, again, as a reader and content consumer, I get frustrated when I read a book and I'm like, what do I do now? So I tried to beat people over the head with the simplicity and hopefully the clarity of what I presented. So it's always wonderful to hear people say that because that really was my main goal when I wrote it. And it took me, 6, 7, 8 years to get to a point where I could write like that. Because it's like making a simple app or something or a website. Simple is difficult. You have to get complicated before you get simple. So I've definitely had my struggles there. So thank you for that compliment.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so let's get into it. I do want to talk a lot about how to get better at golf, how to lower your scores, all that kind of stuff. But I might actually want to start in maybe a somewhat surprising place, is that when I look at the words adorning the top of your book here, it says lower your scores and increase enjoyment. Now, I think a lot of people are focused on the lower your scores part. The increase enjoyment part, I don't know if people like show up to the range and are like, I need to figure out how to increase my enjoyment. But obviously, when you think about what most of us, probably 99% of us, are there not to really make any money or do anything crazy on a course. It's really supposed to be a fun activity, right? And most of us weekend hackers like myself who are out there playing, it's like we have full-time jobs. We're insanely busy, insanely stressed. We got kids. We got tons of responsibilities. Like this is our fun time. So it is kind of sad to go out there and spend your fun time like incredibly pissed off and throwing clubs and, just having a bad day basically. So tell me a little bit about what your philosophy is when it comes to increasing enjoyment on the course, and maybe what you've kind of learned could be like the clearest path for most golfers to get there.
So I would consider myself in that department more of a rehabilitated golfer because for a long time I struggled with my temper and my expectations and enjoying the game. And I just think that if you want to get better at anything, golf or any other thing in life, if you're not passionate about it and you're not enjoying it, it's really hard to be in the right frame of mind to perform well. And if you're placing so much pressure and stress on yourself when you play, I used to tee off thinking, well, if I don't shoot this score, the day's a failure, which is absurd when you think about it, because again, this is for fun and enjoyment. I'm not playing on the PGA Tour for money. Even if I was, I still have a similar philosophy. But yeah, I think, my learnings through that process of trying to come to terms with what I was willing to put into the game and what I wanted out of it was really important realization. And that's initially why I started my website in 2015. But yeah, I think the real answer for me and hopefully others is the expectation management. That was the first quarter of the book, the first foundation, that if you don't manage your expectations properly in this game, you're not going to practice effectively. You're not going to be in the right frame of mind on the course. You're not going to enjoy yourself. It's very hard to get better at this game and lower your scores if you're not having a good time and managing your expectations appropriately. Like I find it almost impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything that stands out to you? Are there any of you had so many great stats in this book that I was like, whoa, every time I read one, I was like, okay, this really puts it in to context. Is there anything that's any stats that stand out to you that like would be eye-opening for golfers when it comes to managing expectations?
Yeah, I think a good starting point is always talking about birdies. I think most golfers assume that their goal on every hole is to make a birdie or make multiple ones per round. Be like, well, I got to shoot low scores, and birdies are a great way to do that. And when you look at the stats, it's kind of a bummer, to be honest with you. People don't like hearing it, but
yeah,
if you're outside of a 5 handicap, you're making like less than half a birdie per round on average. Even the scratch plus handicap players are only averaging, most of them, between 1 to 2 birdies a round. And even your run of the mill PGA Tour players at about 3.5 birdies per round. And most of these are coming on par fives. The scoring average on a par five, whether it's on the tour, which is usually about 4.5, 4.6, and the rest of it is just mistake avoidance on par threes and par fours. So yeah, when I first started my website, one of my rallying calls was let's fight the war on double bogeys, because I knew through my path in the game that reducing the big mistakes was the answer to lower your handicap, 5, 10 strokes, not making more birdies. And that's a big mindset shift because it has strategic implications. It has, mindset implications. So if you're going on the course, a word that I like to use is stingy. I use that with a tour player I coach, being stingy with strokes versus saying I have to do miraculous things to play well. That can really shift people's perspective when they step on the course. And, for the many people who have read the book, that's one of the things I think they got out of it is like, I'm stepping on the course with a new mindset. I'm not as
Mhm.
hard on myself. I'm more accepting of the outcomes of my shots. And definitely just understanding that it's more pars, more bogeys, and less doubles or worse. If you look at the difference between a scratch golfer and a 20 handicap, it's the double bogeys that are the big
Mhm.
differentiator and
Mhm.
more pars
Mhm.
and bogeys. So yeah, I hate to burst people's bubbles, but it's not about hitting it to 5 feet and tapping in birdies.
That comes through in a big way. That
I
comes
wish
through
it
in a
were.
I mean, to me, that comes through like in a big way in the book, that whole philosophy. So it's about avoiding those big blowups. And I want to talk to you about like at what point do you switch in your brain to like, okay, now I'm playing for bogey. So we'll get there because I think that's like pretty important. There's just one other kind of like mindset thing I wanted to bring up is I think you had a quote or a couple of quotes that I really liked in the book. Golf is a game of mistakes, I think was a quote, and another one was there's no such thing as a permanent fix. I like that idea a lot. Tell me a little bit about those ideas.
So, understanding that when you tee it up, I have something called the 2/3 rule. It's also helpful. Like understanding that one part of your game, whether it's tee shots, approach shots, or finesse shots, which I would call wedge and putter play inside 100 yards, at minimum, something's going to feel off.
Yeah.
And maybe two things out of those will feel off. And that's okay. So, understanding that I'm going to miss quite a few fairways. I might hit a few into the trees. I'm definitely going to miss a lot of greens. I might three putt a few times. So, being okay with these results and at peace with them is super important because you don't want to be the golfer who's in this like constant disbelief. Be like, how did I make a bogey there? How did I hit
Yeah.
that into the
Yeah.
trees? And when you're just fighting against the truth of what the game is,
Right.
you're behind the eight ball all the time. And again, I used to play like that a lot, and I still struggle with it from time to time. A lot of what I write is reminders to myself. So yeah, I think that understanding that you have to have acceptance, patience, and forgiveness for these mistakes when they occur and kind of just let them slide and maybe ask a few questions on what you could have done better. And
Mhm.
that's it. You move on to the next shot. So just understanding that they're always a part of the game, and fighting against them is just going to make it harder for yourself. Um, and to your second statement, um, remind me again after my long diet.
The other thing I mentioned was there's no such thing as a permanent fix.
Permanent fix. That's it. Okay. So
Yes.
I think a lot of golfers were constantly inundated with like marketing messages and sayings. And, one of the most common ones that if you're on social media and you got ads coming at you is let's fix your slice. Cause
Yeah.
that's, the big one that most people are struggling with or eliminate it. And I don't like the word eliminate in golf because I much prefer like the word like mitigate, incremental progress, because no matter what kind of swing flaw you have, like for me, it was fighting a hook. I had the opposite. I still hook the ball.
Mhm.
Sometimes my club face presents way too closed on tee shots and approach shots. I never got rid of that hook, but I made it happen less often. I made my hook turn more into a draw straightest shot, but I didn't eliminate it forever. So I think again, when it comes to expectations, if you have a problem in your game that you're trying to solve, like for me right now, it's wedge play around the greens. Um, I'm just trying to not skull it and chunk it a few times here or there. Like I am struggling with that a bit, and I'm more, hoping for clean contact. I know it's still going to happen from time to time, so I
Mhm.
think you want to set yourself up for a reasonable roadmap to what success looks like. And for a lot of players, going from like a 25 handicap to a 20 or 15, you're still going to slice it. So I don't
Mhm.
want you to be so
Mhm.
discouraged when you slice it. I just want you to slice it a little less often.
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and and eventually like yeah, you could really reduce it, but I just think the golf industry loves to sell the idea of like a permanent fix. And I don't want to say it's not possible. It is possible in certain situations, but it's more of like you're neutralizing it and you're making it happen less often. I think that's a more healthy way to approach it.
Yep. Love it. All right, cool. So let's get into some of the specifics. I think we got some of the philosophy down. I would say broadly speaking, on the philosophy side, it's like you know, I think a lot of the stats that you share in the book really just help to kind of put things in perspective, like how rare birdies are, how hard it is to hit greens, like, so not beating yourself up constantly on the course. I think if you can not do that, that'll go a tremendous long way. But let's talk about a little more strategy on the course. So you mentioned when you're thinking about these three different parts of the game, or three different kind of non-putting parts of the game: the tee shots, the approach shots, and the finesse shots. Let's talk a little bit about them. And I think here is where we can, I certainly got a lot of value out of reading your book and even just following you on Twitter and things like that, in terms of like real legitimate practical takeaways. So I know you talk a good bit about how failing to embrace your driver is a big mistake. So let's talk about tee shots there. Tell me your thoughts overall on drivers, and let's put this in the context, maybe if you need to, of like a 15 handicap. And the only reason I mention that is because that's basically where I am. And I'm slightly embarrassed to say that because I feel like I'm a better golfer than that, but that's what the numbers show today. So talk to me about driver to start this.
Yeah. So I think, with what we know about statistics and how scoring occurs, thanks to my friend Mark Brody and his book Every Shot Counts, which I think is a necessary precursor to my book. I mention it probably 30 times in my book.
Yeah, can I stop you there and just
Sure.
mention, I love when you're mentioning these other authors' books. I love when you're bringing in stuff from Atomic Habits with James Clear, who I'm also a big fan of. Like, I love how your book is compiling all the best stuff that you've found, and then obviously adding your spin on everything. So just quick sidebar on that.
Thanks. I try to do that.
Yeah.
So with tee shots, I was raised, when I first took up the game, we were taught like, oh, you got to be conservative and kind of scared off the tee, like hit irons and fairway woods, and your driver was something that you only used it when it seemed like the coast was clear. So I grew up playing a style of golf where I was looking for every reason not to hit my driver. And because of that, I never really embraced it. I didn't practice with it enough. I didn't stick with it in rounds where I felt like I was struggling. And a conversation with Scott Fawcett, who also has, I mentioned him in the book a lot, his decade strategic system, which he kind of built on the top of strokes gained. He pulled me aside years ago when I was talking about being a better tournament player. And he told me, he's like, you're never going to be a great tournament player if you don't embrace your driver. And that applies to everyone in some way. So I think the overall goal is, and Scott says this all the time, is that you have to look for a reason not to hit driver on most holes.
Mm-hmm.
And on most holes in most golf courses, for most golfers, you're probably going to be wanting hitting driver most of the time. There's usually more room than you think. But more importantly, you have to be committed to it. And for a long time, like, I struggled with my driver. I couldn't keep it straight. And I had to work on a lot of the stuff I talk about in the book, like impact location, face control, my setup, tee height, ball position, controlling everything I could to give myself a chance at success. And with that, I realized that driver, I believe, is the most important club in my bag. So I really had to have this mindset that I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to try and be comfortable with it. Because I play with a lot of great golfers in competition, and I don't know one of them who I admire who doesn't embrace their driver. And really the goal is, it's not that you have to hit it 300 yards.
Mm-hmm.
You're hitting it 220, 230 and keeping it in play, and a few less like, swings around or tops.
Yep.
Like, that's what success looks like with your driver. It's not hitting every fairway.
Mm-hmm.
It's, can you have a lot of shots where you have a clear path to the green and a reasonable lie? That can be in the rough. It's more about having the opportunity to get the ball on the green or near the green. Like, that is your objective with your tee shots. It's more about the big mistakes, like the out of bounds, the getting stuck in the trees, hitting it in fairway bunkers. So there's holes where you can aim away from trouble, even if it means going in the rough on the other side. So that's kind of the takeaways from the strokes gained analysis. And you can definitely get more complicated than that. But the simple approach I tell people is like, don't ignore it. Don't lock it away in a dark room somewhere like I did.
Yep.
Do your best to work on it. Get lessons if you need them, and embrace it as best you can. Because if you do want to make big strides in scoring potential, your driver is going to be a big part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've all probably been through that phase where we're like, I'm not hitting driver right now or whatever. Or we have a friend who is like, just doesn't hit driver. They'll
Yeah, they
like
just
hit
like 3-wood off the tee.
three
Yeah.
woods and hybrids and everything else. And so two of the things that I learned from reading your work were one is just on I thought it was really interesting some of the stats you shared on 3-woods versus drivers. Like long and short of it is you really don't get that much more control, if any, from hitting a 3-wood, but you almost definitely are losing substantial distance. Am I summing that up
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I mean, right off the bat, like you've already made that decision. So you're giving up anywhere from 10 to 30 yards, which is worth something. It's worth strokes. People don't think
Mm-hmm.
about that. And the interesting thing about a driver versus a 3-wood, like drivers are designed to be hit off the tee. They've got big faces. They're very forgiving. They have a lot of MOI in them. Whereas 3-woods, they're designed to be hit off the ground. They have smaller faces and they have less MOI. So apples to apples, it's harder to hit your 3-wood straighter than your driver. Like they put a lot of engineering into those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love for someone to explain to me, if you look at the stats, like they bear it out, like golfers are not not materially straighter with their 3-wood on the hole than driver. Of course, there's exceptions. There's always outliers. But you're hitting it 20 to 30 yards shorter. And that's worth, about a quarter of a stroke for most players.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the idea of quote unquote safety clubs, like hitting 3-wood or 4-iron off the tee. If you were to go test them, and I encourage people to do this, go on a launch monitor, hit a bunch of 4-irons, hit a bunch of hybrids, visually look at what your dispersion is. I think you'll be shocked. It's not as straight as you think compared to what the driver was, and that was the testing I did for years that gave me confidence to hit the driver. So yeah, I think the idea of playing it safe off the tee is costing more strokes than people realize. And it's not just in the strategic decision, it's also the mindset of saying, hey, that driver is dangerous. Let's keep it in the bag. Because if you look at that club that way, you're never going to stand over it with confidence. And that's a big part of it too.
And you also make the point that like fairways hit is not a great predictor of score. So you were saying like, you need to get the confidence to get up there and hit your driver. And who cares if you're, in the fringe, in the second cut, whatever, that increased distance is worth much more. I mean, obviously there's exceptions to all of that, but
of course,
generally speaking,
yes.
Generally speaking, over a large enough sample set, hitting the ball further, even if you're not on the fairway, is a better outcome. Yeah.
Yeah. If you took two golfers and said, hey, golfer A is hitting 80% of their fairways and golfer B is only hitting 40%, everyone say, well, obviously golfer A is a better player. And it's like, well, what if golfer A was hitting it 200 yards off the tee and golfer B was hitting it 300? Distance is worth something. And, you'd also need to know, like, well, when they miss the fairway, are they missing it big? Are they going out of bounds?
Sure. Yep.
There's more nuance to it, which is why I tell people, like, if you want to get granular with this stuff, go get Arccos or ShotScope or one of those apps where you can track your strokes gained and see where you're losing strokes off the tee. But yeah, fairways hit on itself is not a great predictor of success. Just like putts per round isn't either. There's just not enough information. We don't know how far you're hitting it. And more importantly, we don't know what's happening when you miss the fairway. If that golfer who had tremendous distance when they missed the fairway was just missing the fairway by 5, 10, 15 yards on both sides, that's not so bad. They're keeping it in play. And now they've got a huge advantage in proximity with their iron shots, making it easier to hit greens, which is a great predictor of scoring success.
Yeah. Let's go there. But before we do, you're up on the tee. You are about to hit your driver. You got to figure out where to aim. What are you thinking about when you are considering that decision?
So when I look at a golf hole, if I'm looking at like a satellite image or something like that and studying it, and again, I have to give credit to Mark Brody and Scott Fawcett for this. They absolutely influenced my thinking and kind of showed me the light on this. But, you really need to look at like, where's the big, like capital BIG trouble? So the easiest example, which was in Every Shot Counts, was that let's say a hole with OB up the right and up the left was just rough and you aimed down the center of the fairway. that's a bad target for most players because a certain percentage of those are going to go to the right out of bounds. And that is the biggest penalty in golf. You lost 2 strokes and have to re-tee it. Whereas what he found is kind of like the less accurate you are off the tee, the more you should aim towards the rough. So the better player, let's call it the scratch plus golfer, they can aim up the left center of the fairway. But as you get into like the 10, 15, 20 handicap, it actually is a statistical advantage to aim in that left rough. So that if you have an opportunity to aim away from big trouble, which a lot of holes do offer you that. Let's say it's a fairway bunker on one side. Bunkers are very penal for golfers. It's almost a full stroke penalty for most players. There's fescue, water, whatever, trees, and it's relatively innocuous on the other side. Yeah, you should aim away from that trouble. Some holes you can't do that. Some holes there's trouble on both sides, and it's like, yep, I just got to hit this up the gut. So you're looking at where does the fairway pinch? Where are the bunkers surrounding the fairway? Is there like abnormally difficult rough, like fescue, trees, OB, water? And you're making sure that like, okay, I know where this stuff is and I'm going to adjust based on that. But more importantly, when you step on the tee, I don't want to think about, oh, I can't hit it over there. I want to think about, I know where my target is. That's my target over there.
Yep.
And it's more of like a tunnel vision towards that. And that's where like the good course managers are doing their homework beforehand. So you step up to the tee with a plan. And if you're playing the same course over and over again, you could do this easily. Like when I play my home course, I know where all my targets are. Second hole, par 5, junk up the left. I'm just aiming over to the right. I know I'm aiming away from it. And if I hit the rough, no big deal. Not the end of the world.
I've mentally been going through. So I'm a member of a club here in Charlotte, and I've mentally been going through the course with all these recommendations that you gave in the book, and I haven't played a full round yet since reading it. But I have there's a hole on the course. It's a second hole on the course. It's a par 4. It is major trouble on the right side. It is woods, OB, and it just falls off a cliff. So if you are even miss the fairway by like 10 feet, you're toast on the right side. On the left side, there's fairway bunkers and there's a big hill. But you can potentially clear the fairway bunkers. And even if you're hitting off the hill, it's not a terrible place to approach the green. So I'm kind of visualizing, I think the way you put it in the book is you're almost like thinking about your driver, in this case, dispersion, as like a horizontal oval, right? So you're thinking about that left to right dispersion, like, and yes, there's going to be outliers. Yes, there are some there you're just going to totally blast right, and they're going to,
you just have to live with it.
That's an outlier, right? So, but like you can say, okay, 70% of the time, maybe I can put it within this dispersion, this horizontal oval, and to your point, okay, where do you center that thing, right? Because if the center of it is in the center of the fairway, that gives you a lot less wiggle room. So I'm kind of thinking about, I'm almost aiming for the left side bunker in this.
You almost have to take the lesser of two evils. And another, mistake that people make with strategy is that a lot of people, when they talk about how you should play a golf course, they assume that you can just like pick out where the ball's going to land.
Right.
So people are like, oh yeah, you want to be below the hole on this hole, or you want to be on the right side of this fairway for a better angle. It's like, great, I'd love to do that. But if you have me hit 50 shots on a launch monitor with no pressure and told me to aim at that right side of the fairway, let's see where all of them land. So good strategy is it's more about accounting for where the ball could go versus where you want it to go.
Right.
That's where people get into trouble. If they say, oh, we would love for you to be on the right side of this fairway so you have a better angle into that green. But what they didn't tell you is that to the right of that fairway are trees and some bad stuff.
Right.
It's like, well, now that you're trying to gain that angle, you're already thinking about your next shot. You're not taking care of business on the tee shot to make sure it's in play. That's your number one goal. What can I do to keep the ball in play? If that's on the left side of the fairway and I don't have the best angle into that green, fine, but I still have a clear path. That is way better than being in the trees and the junk to the right. So we have to be a little disciplined and risk. It's almost like you're being a bit risk averse in certain situations because you can't play for the best outcome. You have to consider all outcomes.
Mhm,
And it's
mhm.
golf. Like, we just do not control where the golf ball goes.
Yep. That philosophy makes a ton of sense to me, and I'm looking forward to implementing it. There are a lot of stuff that you've talked about in this book that has me feeling optimistic, maybe irrational optimism,
Well, I will say
TBD, but yeah,
the one, go back to the introduction where I said,
yeah,
I'm going to give you a lot of stuff in the book.
yeah.
I think you'll find a lot of it fascinating and want to put it
Mhm.
into your game, but please choose a few things at a time and be patient because you can't put it all into play
That
at
makes
once.
sense. Yep,
You know,
that makes sense.
the difference between knowledge and wisdom, it's very clear in golf too. Just because we know something doesn't mean we can put it into place on the golf course. That's where we, making that leap, that's hard. That's where you have to put the work in. Understanding something is the
Yep,
first step.
yep. Yeah, fair enough. But at the same time, it's not like you're very prescriptive about swing mechanics and like you have to do this and you have to do that. It is more a lot of it is strategy and it's just like stuff that you're like, okay, once you learn it, you're like, okay, that just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
It's like,
I've gotten, thankfully, tons of emails and messages at this point where people have read the book and just their mindset shift and the strategy stuff. They're like, I just shot the best score of my life because I
yeah,
wasn't aiming at dumb targets. I was patient with myself. And I'm like, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's not always all of it. Sometimes there's swing stuff that needs to be addressed, and I can help you with practice methods or you can get lessons. But for some people, like, yeah, they could have been playing the game the wrong way the whole time and had no idea, like, oh, if I just, you know, did a few of these things, it wasn't so hard on myself and picked smarter targets. There goes 5 shots. That is very possible for a
yeah,
lot of people.
yep, yep. Exactly. And it's just like a lot of the conventional wisdom is probably not correct, like aiming at the pin and other things like that, which let's get into.
Nice
And
segue.
yeah, and by the way, I will say for my own personal game, I'm particularly excited because I'm about to start playing in a Thursday night men's league. And like so
Nice.
I have 3 kids and the youngest is much younger than the other two. So when he was born about 4 years ago, I was like, all right, my golf game is just gonna basically
Wither
flatline and
away, die.
certainly not improve for like several years. And now I'm like the starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm going to be playing golf every Thursday night for the next 6 months. Like,
Heck
I
yeah.
think I think I can legit get better. So, anyhow, all right. So let's talk about approach shots.
Yeah.
So I saw some of the stuff that you put on Twitter and you post like a lot of good visuals and stuff on Twitter. I assume Instagram. Are you on there too?
Yeah, I
I'm
do some I'm not as active on Instagram, but
okay.
I
Okay.
have some videos on there.
I'm not a big Instagram guy, but I've been more active on Twitter, even though I've taken it off my phone because I was a little too active. But
It's
you
a
post a
horrible
lot of
drug.
yeah, I know. You post a lot of great stuff on there, but there was something on approach shots that it was some of your work around where golfers miss greens that
Yep.
really kind of drew me in. So tell me about I guess what is probably the most common mistake that most golfers are making in their approach shots.
So, yeah, everything I told you on tee shot strategy, almost reverse it with approach shot strategy. So, if there is a place in this game where you want to, like, quote unquote pump the brakes and be conservative, it's approach shots. That is where most of scoring occurs. So, to be very clear with people, like, again, from Mark Brody's work, what he found is the biggest separator in scoring potential. I don't care if you're on the PGA Tour or you're 20 handicap, it's mostly iron play. It's a big deal. Um, and the goal with irons is to hit as many greens in regulation as possible. And if you don't hit greens in regulation, giving yourself relatively straightforward, easier chip and pitch shots. And what I mean by that is if you're on the rough 10 yards off the green with plenty of green to work with, or the fairway, maybe not short sided in a bunker or a ditch somewhere. Um, so that's, I could tell you approach that strategy in 20 seconds for most players. Take more club and aim to the center of the green. Like, that alone, again, has dropped many handicaps. Caveat, you can get way more advanced than that, but you don't need to unless you're like way better at this game. So it all starts with the fact that when you measure hundreds of thousands of golfers and millions of golf shots, and I've confirmed this with so many different stat tracking companies, every golfer I don't care if you're scratch, 20 handicap. Most of them miss the green on the short side. They're not getting it on the green. They're short of the green. A lot of that's because of tendency for a lot of golfers to swipe across and keep the face open. So there's a lot of short right shots going on. We talk about slicing. If you have that out to in swing path and an open face pattern, you're losing a lot of distance. You're spinning it too much. The ball's just not getting to the green. It's missing short right. And then there's a lot of long left when you close that face down, but not as much. So most golfers are not airmailing the greens. So it's quite simple for a lot of players. Take more club. I tell people, like, ditch the rangefinder, get a GPS watch, and just take the yardage that's closer to the back. Now, I know some people always come back to me like, well, you haven't played my course. There's like a pit of sharks back there with laser beams and alligators who jump at you if you get it over the green. And I'm like, I've seen most golf courses. There's some room back there, and you're not going to hit it there. Most golfers aren't flushing it too well. So the data is quite clear. Like, almost everyone's not taking enough club. So I would ask people, prove me wrong. Start taking more club and track what happens and see if you hit more greens. And if you start airmailing a bunch of them, then back off from that strategy a bit. But for most people, that's going to help them. And that's one of the things where someone was like, hey, I just took your approach shot strategy stuff, took more club and aimed at the meat of the green, and like, voila. I'd shot my lowest score ever.
I just did that. I just played last week in Costa Rica. It was the only round I've played since reading your book, and I actually didn't look at exactly how many greens I hit. But I need to go back and look at that. But there were several shots I took where I was like, this is more club than I would usually take here, and I ended up on the green. And
it's
not sense.
This stuff, again, knowledge versus wisdom and discipline. Like, this stuff is very easy to understand. It's very difficult to stick with it in a round because, you are going to, like, even if you pick all the right targets, you're still going to make mistakes and not hit greens. And you're like, screw that guy. I'm going to go back to aiming at every pin. And then you're back to like the gambling type scenario. You're the gambler. You're not the casino. That's kind of another, metaphor I love to use. But with approach shots, a lot of it is taking more club. And then a lot of it, directionally is, if you've got tucked pins on the front left, front right, forget about them. You can't squeeze it in there. No, PGA Tour players can't squeeze it in there. I can show you, plenty of people have done studies on that. They're not good enough to squeeze. I have a tour player I coach, and I'm like, we both agree he's taking more club in those situations and not trying to squeeze it in there. Tucked back left pin, back right. Why do you not chase after them? Because again, the same thing happens with the driver. If you only play with where you want the ball to go, which is next to the pin, and you're not accounting for where the pin is placed, then that cone of dispersion, and with our irons, we have left to right and short long. So we have north, south, and east, west to worry about. It's not just east, west like with the driver. So now as you shift those targets over towards the edge of the green, you're just going to short side yourself more. You're going to make more bogeys, doubles, and triples versus if you were just at the meat of the green, you'll allow your dispersion to go left and right, and you're taking enough club and getting more of that north versus that too much south. So I view approach shot strategy as quite simple for most players, and it's more of an exercise in discipline. And yes, if you got to a very high level, then absolutely you can learn, Scott Fawcett's system decade and get more granular with, okay, the pin's here, we're going to aim 4 yards right of there and stuff like that. But I would say anyone who's, I hate to draw lines in the sand with handicaps, but if like you're a 7-8 handicap or higher, I think you'll have way more success with just the simplicity of stepping up to the shot and knowing like, okay, what's my number towards the back of the green? And there's the center meat part of it. I'm just going to aim there every time. Like you do that over and over again, like you're going to hit more greens. And when you're on the putting surface, like your chances of posting a lower score on the hole drop dramatically. It's mostly about hitting greens in regulation and giving yourself relatively straightforward wedge shots. That's it. Easier said than done.
I think so because it's so damn tempting to go at that pin. And you're like, oh, this is perfect distance, and I can get it in there. Couple things stood out to me. So one is the stat that you dropped in there that is if at the 15 handicap level, that's basically me.
That's the typical golfer, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
You're
that's what
missing.
we could call like the median average golfer
Okay.
is around that point.
Okay. You're missing 51% of greens to the short side and only 6% long. That's pretty astounding. Like that stat is pretty astounding. Yeah.
The great part about that stat is that you can take any handicap level and it's usually like 4 or 5% of balls are long of the green. So it's just, so if you started, like when you look through the table in the book, as you get from like 25 handicap down to scratch, it's just more on the green, less short, and less left and right. But it's more of a short long problem than it is a left right problem with iron play.
Yeah. So scratch golfers, you have 26% are short, only 6% long, to prove your point there. So take more club. In your
and it's just the reason you have to take more club is that, again, what's the most likely outcome? You're not going to hit the ball too well. Like,
the way I think the point is that if somebody's like, okay, the pin is 175 yards away, I hit my 5-iron 175. Therefore, I'm going to
exactly.
Sorry. I should say when I flush
when you flush it, exactly. There you go.
It goes 175, right?
Yeah.
So what are the chances that I'm flushing this 5-iron? Right. That's where your kind of circle of dispersion comes into play, right?
Most people, again, they're planning for what they want to happen, which is the lowest probability, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And what could happen, which is, you're going to toe it or heel it a bit. You might chunk it a little bit, and all of a sudden 175 turns into 150.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing, I can't remember if it was in this section of the book. I think it was. You talked about I think it was a college coach that took all the pins out of the greens. And so
there's been a number of these experiments where tons of instructors that are they take out the pins for the day at a golf course, and everyone beats their handicap by multiple strokes. Why? Because they're just aiming at the meat of the green.
Just going for greens. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that is easy to hear on a podcast like this, but when you get out there and so I made the mistake of, before I read your book, I just bought this nice new Bushnell rangefinder. I'm like, oh, this thing's great. And then I read your book. I was like, shit, I should have gotten a
burn
GPS.
This thing. Yeah.
So, but actually,
you could have both. I use both, but
what do you do? Do you like the 18 Birdies app, by the way? Because my buddies all use that to score, just for scoring, and I'm like,
it's a great app.
$100 and get the GPS or whatever.
There's so many great apps out there. I don't use them because I don't want my phone out all the time, so I use a GPS watch and a rangefinder. But I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I'm playing at a more advanced level, so I can be a little bit more granular with where the pin is. And
there's no GPS apps for the Apple Watch, are there?
There are. 18 Birdies works with the Apple Watch.
Okay,
there's a ton of them.
I might have to do that then.
Yeah, I think it's just, it's a matter of kind of putting it's getting back to that birdies discussion. When you think your job is to make birdies and make miraculous shots, of course you're going to look at the pin because you're like, I need to get the ball really close to the hole.
Mm.
And when that's your goal and expectation, of course your targets are going to dictate. They're going to be more aggressive, and aggressiveness does not work on approach play. You're losing more strokes than you're gaining with that strategy. It's kind of like the guy who always tells you about his great blackjack runs, but he's not telling you about 90% of the time where he's blowing money to the casino. You might hit a few of those great pin seekers, and if you want to play that way, that's awesome. Go for it, but you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You can't say you want to achieve your lowest handicap and kind of play that reckless kind of gambler type golf. They don't work together, unfortunately. You have to kind of choose one side or maybe a blend of both. That's fine too.
Mm-hmm. Now, a key part of all this is getting some kind of an accurate measure on your distances. So,
yes,
I think you talk a little bit about game tracking systems and launch monitors. Tell me what you would recommend, I guess, for most people in terms of getting an accurate read on distance.
So super simple way to get your accurate distances, which again will help you make smarter decisions with clubs. Couple of ways. One, launch monitors, you can maybe book a session on a TrackMan or a Foresight GC Quad, like a more commercial, quality launch monitor. And you could say, okay, you hit 27 irons. Like, let's see how far they actually went.
Mhm.
So you could do that with like an instructor or go to a simulator place.
Can I ask you
Start
a
seeing
really
like,
dumb question on that?
yeah, go ahead.
My impression is that range balls in a lot of cases don't go as far
They
as regular
don't.
balls.
So
Okay.
yes,
Is that, do they adjust for that? Like if I went to put to my club and they were doing distances, would they adjust for that? Do you know? Or
TrackMan, if you're using a TrackMan, like they have a setting for
yeah.
range balls.
Oh,
It's close, but it's not great.
okay.
So range balls are not as good as premium balls, of course. So like, yeah,
Okay.
you might be hitting a 7-iron 158 with a range ball, and in real life it could be 164. There could
Okay.
be some disparity there. So
Okay.
if I like to cross-reference both, like in a perfect world, it'd be awesome to go to a simulator with like Pro V1s or some other type
Mhm.
of premium ball,
Mhm.
hit a bunch of balls, see your numbers, and then also track your encore stuff. Like if you had the 18 Birdies app, you can
Yep.
manually tag a system like ShotScope or Arccos. And then they give you like a adjusted number on like, okay, you hit 107 irons. This is how far it's generally going when we remove all the noise and the data. And they've gotten pretty good at that. So yeah, I think, between on-course tracking and launch monitors, you can arrive at a number saying like, well, I know I fly my 7-iron about 175 on a decent strike. If I could really step on it, I can hit it 182, 183. And if I don't strike it well, it might be like 168. So I know I live in those ranges and I know my numbers. And it's just being truthful about them on the golf course and adjusting for elevation and wind and all that other good stuff. But yeah, if you don't know what your numbers are, then how can you make good decisions?
Mhm.
And again, if you're more inclined to do this stuff, it's a little more effort, a little more homework to do. But for the analytical, like golfer who wants to figure this stuff out, it could be a
Mhm.
fun little journey
Yeah,
for
for
you.
sure. I definitely want to, especially since I have all this golf ahead of me. Like I want to implement a system like this. I have like all my rounds in 18 Birdies, but I haven't used the GPS thing in the past, so I don't have club distances and all that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of wondering like if I should do that or if I should go like an Arccos or something like that.
I prefer the Arccos ShotScope method because it's passively tracking for you. You don't need to take out your phone and like press, well, I hit here and press the
Mm-hmm.
button.
Mm-hmm.
It's passively tracking. Like Arccos just released this link thing that's on your belt buckle.
Mm-hmm.
ShotScope, it's in their GPS watch. And at the end of the round, you're just confirming, okay, yeah, I was over here on the fairway. It's mostly accurate, but you need to do some editing.
Yeah.
I prefer that method because it's passive.
Does it do putting or is that too
Yes, it
precise?
does. Putting requires a little bit more effort because the GPS isn't accurate enough to tell between like a 9-footer and 15-footer.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really wanted good strokes gained putting data, you would need
Mm-hmm.
to know like, okay, that was a 7-footer on that hole and edit it afterwards.
Okay.
So that takes a little bit more effort, but with the irons and driver and all the other clubs in your bag, like it'll get you pretty close.
Okay. Okay. And strokes gained, I think that's probably going to be beyond the scope of what we get into in this conversation, but basically that's a measure of areas of your game where you're outperforming or underperforming golfers at the same handicap level. Is that right?
Exactly. It's just it's a track of relative performance. So if you're a 15 handicap and you want to get to a 10 handicap, you could say, okay, I am losing 2 strokes off the tee compared to a 10 handicap or even a 15 handicap. You say, great, must be a reason for that. So you dig deeper. It could be a distance thing. It could be a directional thing. There's strokes gained approach. Probably not hitting enough greens, maybe going in too many bunkers. That's a bigger loss of strokes. Wedge play, proximity issue. You're not getting it close enough with your wedges. So it's just a very nice, quick, and clean way to show where your strengths and weaknesses are. And then you dig deeper and you say, okay, why am I losing strokes with my irons?
Yep.
Am I not taking enough club? Could be a strike issue. So it's a bit of a detective work, but a lot of golfers think like, oh, I need to spend all this time on my putter and wedges, and they say like, well, those are actually strengths, but typically
Mm-hmm.
like it's really your irons and driver that are holding you back,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
most of the time for those big
Yep.
scoring strides. So it just holds a mirror up to your game, and you say, okay, here's where I need to work on, and here's a strength that maybe I want to maintain it, but I don't want to spend too much time on it if it's already good, because the returns are going to diminish at some point.
Yep. And you don't need to do advanced math, because it sounds like, I think
No, it's done for
all
you.
these apps
Yeah.
do it for you. Yeah.
Yeah, the actual math behind strokes gain, it's not complicated. It's just very tedious. It's saying like, well, I missed that putt from 8 feet, and that had, a 30% make rate for 15 handicap. Therefore, I lost 0.7 strokes, and then you just keep adding those up as the round goes on, and you say, okay, I lost 2 strokes in my putter that round. It's just it's tedious math, and the apps do it for you.
Yep. All right. I want to talk about kind of when things go south, when they go wrong. But before we get into that, just real quick, because we kind of skipped wedge shots or finesse shots. Real quick there, my impression from your book is basically, like you kind of said earlier in this conversation, don't get too fancy trying to leave yourself an uphill putt, this and that. It's like your main job is to get the ball on the green. Is that anything you would add to that?
No, I would say for most people to like not lose strokes with their wedges, it's just like you want to stand over like a 20, 30 yard pitch chip shot and being like, I'm going to get this on the green to 20 feet.
Yeah.
Like, I feel pretty good about that. You do that a lot and don't like chunk it or skull it.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be fine. Like, hitting it to 8 feet every time, like, no one does that on average. Like, most golfers are 10 feet and beyond, and that kind of ring around the pin. So a lot of wedge play is really not shooting yourself in the foot. It's not hitting all the shots you see on TV.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, like, I'm a +2 handicap, and like that's what I'm currently working on. Like my wedge game around the greens has taken a nosedive over the last couple of years. I'm just trying to stand over the ball, like get good contact and get it on the putting surface. Like, I'm not trying to hit it to 3 feet every time. Like, it shouldn't be that complicated.
That's somewhat encouraging for us 15 handicaps to hear. And then I would also say
I know plenty of 15 handicaps who have a better greenside wedge game than me.
But to your point about the PGA Tour players, like, and I think you remind us in the book, is that, remember, you're seeing the best shots of the best players in the world on their best days, right?
Yeah,
like,
I coach Mackenzie Hughes, who's also a Charlotte guy. He is a god with his wedge. He does stuff with his wedge that I cannot fathom. It's unbelievable.
I saw he was up in the leaderboard, and
he finished third yesterday.
Yeah,
he had a chance to win at Valspar, which was exciting. It was
cool.
nerve-wracking to watch for me. But even him, like, he's always top 10 in strokes gained around the green, and like, he doesn't hit it to 4 feet every time. Like, they like, as good as he is, like, he just can't do it. It's hard.
Yeah.
So if you step up to a wedge shot being like, okay, it's got to be a 5-footer or crap, like, no, 15 feet's fine. Like, don't get too cute with it. Just get it on the putting surface, please.
Ultimately, you need to two-putt that thing. So, okay, so let's talk about when things go wrong. So, you talked about at the beginning of this conversation, it's kind of the war on double bogeys, and that's the real delta in terms of changing score. So let's talk about how the mindset shifts. I get up there on a par 5, 500 yards, 525 straight away. I'm not too worried about anything, but then I just slice my driver right into the woods. I can probably pitch it out straight to where I am on the fairway. Maybe I can, if I hit an awesome shot, maybe I can get like a 6 or a 5 iron through and advance it 150 yards. But tell me about mindset. I'm in the woods in whatever scenario. What happens to my mind? What should happen to my mindset?
So the hardest thing to do in golf is disassociate yourself from like prior and future shots, which we would call like living in the present, which is very hard to do in golf. So the easiest thing to do is when you hit that iron tee shot is say, shit, I just made a horrible mistake. Now I got to make up for it. I still got to make par here. So what can I do to hit a miraculous shot here to get it close to the green? Let's say it was a par 4 and then this par 5. So a great mindset shift, again, from Mark Brody's book. And another thing with PGA Tour players, we're always seeing them hit these crazy shots out of the trees, and like they always seem to get it out of there. It's unbelievable because they show the guy who gets it out of there.
Yeah,
They're not showing
for some
the guy
reason
who planks it around.
For some reason, I visualized like that year in the Masters where it was like a playoff and Bubba Watson was in the woods and he just like
he's
hit
like
one
hooked
out
it
of
out of
there.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
I
That's the
mean,
ultimate hero shot.
that's a 1 out of a million shot for anyone
Yeah,
else,
yeah.
to hook your gap wedge like
Right.
that. Even for a tour player. So yeah, I think knowing that from about 150 yards or farther in a recovery situation, so where you don't you're impeded to the green or you just don't have an opportunity, you don't have a straight shot to the green. Most tour players are making bogey 80% of the time. So, it's a mindset shift. That's hard to do because it's kind of like that gambling mentality when you're on, I always say it's like being on tilt on the poker table. When you've got a bad run of cards and you're like, well, I'm going to bet more aggressively to make up for it, then everyone else on the table is like, great, I get to take all this guy's money now. And same thing in golf. Like when you make those mistakes, most people their mind turns into aggressive state because they're angry and they want to make up for what happened. And the truth of the matter is it's less sexy and less fun is that getting the ball back to safety. And if that means pitching out sideways or 50 yards up or 80 yards up, whatever the high percentage shot is to give you a clear shot to the green with the next one is the right answer. And you have to be very realistic with your skill level. For me, I can hook the ball around the trees more than a 15 handicap could. So I could probably be a little bit more aggressive with the type of shot I could hit. If I was on the other side and I had to hit a big slice, I don't play that shot as much. So I'm going to probably punch it out sideways. So you have to be truthful, but how far you can get it up, how much you could kind of bite off versus making sure that you get back to safety. And at that point, if it was a par 5, then you could still make par, but par 4, it's now bogey's a good score.
Yeah.
And that's
I
taking
kinda
your
like
medicine.
that.
That's hard. That's
Yeah.
hard to do. Changing your mind saying, well, I was hoping for a par here, but no, if I make bogey, I've done well for myself. That's my new par kind of.
Yeah. I need to work on implementing that on the course, but
Everyone does.
In theory, I like that idea of okay, I'm in jail here. Now I play for bogey. I like that as a mindset shift.
It's
a
so
rule
hard
of
to
thumb.
do.
Yeah.
I even had a conversation with Mackenzie. So Saturday at the Valspar, he gets into contention. He's 9 under. I don't know if you saw Keith Mitchell dunked his iron shot on the 18. It was crazy Saturday. It was a crazy tournament. Anyway, so he blasts his tee shot into the trees. He's got tree trouble. 18's a very difficult hole. And they made the right call. He had to kind of pitch out sideways and he had this 60-yard shot to a front pin. And he just had to hit it well past the pin because he knew he's we talked about it afterwards. He's I knew I couldn't make double there. And that meant as good of a wedge player as he is, he had to play past the hole. He gave himself a chance at par. It was a 30-footer, just missed, but he was you know what? Bogey was a good outcome there. Kept me in the tournament. And that's the same mentality all golfers need to shoot their lowest scores. It's you need to know when to take your medicine and just say, okay, whatever I was hoping for on the tee shot is not possible anymore. The situation has changed and I must accept this new situation. And all I can do is make a good decision with the shot I have at hand, not with the shot I was hoping to hit off the tee. That's over with. It already happened. You can't change that. And that's a very hard thing to do. That takes a lot of, kind of discipline, emotional control. Every golfer struggles with that.
I'm going to be working on that this year for sure.
But that's how, if you're a 15 handicap, that's how you get down to a 10.
Yeah.
Because you're probably making double, triple from the trees a lot. You start making more 5s in that situation. That's good. That's how you lower your scores.
Yeah. 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 I think a couple of there are a couple really clear takeaways for me. I think that aim thing is really big too off the tees. That being realistic about where you could possibly hit this ball. Make sure you're aiming to the right spot. And then when you do get in jail, realize, okay, my life has just changed. Let me deal with the situation that I'm really in.
It's like every guy when they have a baby.
Well, yes, we were talking about.
The script has shifted. I can't go out with my buddies as much as I want to. The things have changed. The old me is not here anymore. So
that's right.
There's just things in life we have to accept. And when you hit it into the trees, that's one of them.
Exactly. All right. We haven't talked about putting really yet. That's we could probably do 10 podcast
It's
episodes
a whole
on
black
putting,
box
but
in itself.
yeah, yeah. But I wanted to just kind of put it in this context, back to the sort of managing expectations. And I'm hoping you can kind of help us understand how important putting is. And then maybe we could just, give kind of one or two kind of tips to folks. But, we hear, drive for show, putt for dough. So I guess, is that true? How should we think about putting at high level?
I think putting is very important, but it's not. If you said, well, what was the difference between like someone getting from a 20 to a 10? Two-thirds of that's usually through ball striking, and then the other third is between wedges and putter. So I think putting and even wedge play, I throw into this bucket. It's an area where you can make some quick gains. And what I mean by that is less three putts. So, just being able to stand over a 30 footer and 40 footer and hitting it 3 to 4 feet away from the hole versus 8 feet away from the hole. So a lot of cleaning up like those sloppy three putts is how a lot of golfers shave, 3, 4, 5 strokes off their game. So that's better speed control. I think speed control is the number one skill in putting. It's making a few more 4, 5, 6, 7 footers where you have a chance to make them. But eventually you hit a point where the next level of gains is going to be harder. Putting's difficult. You're putting on a living surface. It's changing throughout the day. There's spike marks. It's growing. It's just hard to make putts. That's why the make rate from 50%. I'm sorry, the make rate from 8 feet is only 50% for tour players, and they're putting on perfect greens. So I think a lot of it is, can I clean up the sloppy three putts? Can I make a few more short ones? Kind of like a wedge play. Once you're like cleaning up that basic stuff, like with wedges, getting it on the green in that 10 to 20 foot window, the next level then requires a lot more time and effort. So me, for example, like for me to play well in tournaments and shoot under par and make birdies when I need them in tournaments, like, yeah, I'm going to have to drain some 15 footers, some 8 footers, some 20 footers. They don't happen often, but I got to make a few of them here and there. That required a lot of time and effort. So not everyone has unlimited time and effort, obviously. So I think, the easiest thing for putting is like, can you work on your speed control? And everyone can do a putting mat indoors where they can work on, their setup and face control on those shorter ones. But I don't want you to overdose on it either. I don't think most people do. Most people hate practicing their putting, but I would just tell people, like, if you could spend like 5 to 15 minutes, like a week working on speed control on a real green, if you have the opportunity, like that could make a big difference for a lot of people. So it's not that I want you to think, oh, I need to be pouring in putts from 10, 20 feet. Like, that's not going to happen that often. Like, once you get outside at 6, 7, 8 feet, your chances of making putt drop dramatically for every golfer. So, yeah, it's just, it's a game of proximity, and it's no more apparent in putting. But I think cleaning up the mess, if you've got a lot of sloppy three putts, like that's something where you say, like, I'm going to spend a few months on this.
Yeah.
I really work on my speed control and shorter putts. That's how you get rid of, you could drop scores relatively quickly with minimal effort. But again, you will hit a ceiling at some point.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's where low hanging fruit is probably for someone like
That's
me
how I
to-
view the short game.
Yeah.
I always say this. I'm like, if you're ignoring your wedges and putter, don't work on them.
Yeah.
Be proficient with them. Clean up the mess. When you feel like you're cleaned up the mess, then your bigger gains are going to be coming from your irons and driver. That's as simple as I can put it.
So one of the stats that jumped out to me was if you're a 90 golfer, so if you're shooting 90, you only make 50% of your putts from 5 feet. 5 feet seems like a fairly short putt. And if you're a scratch golfer, you only make 66% of your putts from 5 feet. So this is, again, comes back to the expectations management. You see a lot of 20 handicappers out there getting really pissed off when they miss a 5-footer. You're like, hey, scratch golfers aren't always making that, buddy.
Well, they're getting pissed off when they miss 20 footers. So like the other thing I would tell you about putting from an expectation management thing is like, people view putting as like, this is where my score is determined. This is where the putt for dough came from. It's like, well, I made a 6 on this hole because I missed that putt, or they think in like full strokes, and it's really fractional strokes. Like you made a 6 on that hole because you hit your driver into the trees and you chunked your iron shot, and now you've got this 20-footer for 5.
Right,
Like,
right.
you didn't make the 6 because of your putter. So people mentally place way more importance on the binary result of I made it or I missed it.
Yeah.
Damn it. That should have been a 4,
Well,
like,
yeah,
because I
'cause
missed
that's where
that
it all
putt.
culminates there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but what happened prior to that is the bigger predictor of your scores on the hole. Like, you can't always rely on your putter to bail you out. It's just not possible. So if you're on the putting green and you're saying, like, my intention on every putt is to make it, and whenever I miss them, therefore I am disappointed, you're going to be in a horrible headspace. Because again, if if a tour pro can't make more than 50% from 8 feet, like, how do you expect to do much better than that? So I think with putting, our intention should be, good speed outside of 10 feet, like good speed cozying up to the hole a bit. And then inside of 10 feet, like, yeah, I'm trying to get a good read and put a good stroke on it.
Mhm.
I want to make it. My intention is to make it,
Mhm.
but I'm also not going to lose my shit if I miss it.
Now, what if you're like, because I'm pretty good at missing really short putts. What if you're what if you're like, what's your philosophy on like 2 or 3 footers? Like, are you? I'm thinking in terms of speed. Like, you see, some people think you should just jar it, like smash it, so that there's no doubt. But then that's the one where you end up with a 3-footer, and then it's a 10-footer coming back or something like that. So,
Yeah.
are you?
So
Yeah. How do you
no, I'm
think about
not. I included an image in the book from a book called Lowest Score Wins. I think Aimpoint did a study with them where they kind of showed capture speed. So speed is still important on short putts. So some people say, like, oh, I've got a 4-footer, I'm going to hit it hard and take the break out of it. And when the ball is approaching the hole at a faster speed,
Oh,
you're actually
yes. I
making the
remember this
hole
graphic. Yes.
smaller.
Yes.
That's where you get those violent lip outs.
Right.
So the harder you hit it, you're just imagine that hole shrinking. You ever been on the putting green with those like tiny holes or those practice 8 holes? You've just
I
made it
prefer the
like that
like
tiny hole.
I prefer the like soccer golf ones to like
Yeah.
ridiculously large ones, you know?
But like when you stand over the ball and you're like, I'm gonna ram this in the hole.
Yeah.
Like I said, when you pick 3-wood off the tee versus driver, like you've already
Right. So you
made it
need to be
harder
that
to
much
make
more
it.
accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you made the hole smaller. So most putting experts would agree that, like, if you could get your ball somewhere between 12 to 24 inches past the hole, depending on how far away you are,
Yep.
like that's the optimal distance to leave your or
To miss.
speed where
Yeah.
you're still making the hole big enough. Like, you don't want to baby it in there and drop it on the last revolution
Yep.
because then you're going to leave too many short.
Okay.
So yeah, I've gotten way better at those testy 3, 4, 5-footers, and it's really just obviously the face control is important. You want to hit it on your line, but the speed is so important. Like, you want it to, like, you still want to be able to drop it in the side on the left and right where it creeps in. And if you hit it too hard, you've removed that possibility. Now you're only working with a third of the hole versus like most of it. So yeah, I think if you're standing over a shorter putt and your intent is to hit it harder, there's only one guy I know who could do that. Do you know who that was? Only one guy in the history of golf. It's the best ever.
Oh, Tiger.
Tiger's the
Yeah.
only one I've ever
Yeah.
seen. He didn't miss. He
Right.
didn't miss inside a 5-footer like literally forever because he knew he was going to make the comeback, or he was
Yeah.
just confident. Like, throw him out the window. I watched him
Mhm.
do that for
Mhm.
years. It was incredible at just ramming the ball in the hole.
Yeah. Yeah.
He also had impeccable face control, and he just knew.
That's probably why I probably
Yeah.
watched too much Tiger. So that's
So
probably
yeah, I think speed's important on those short ones, but yeah, you want to. An easy drill people could do is kind of like that round robin, like a 5-footers
Yeah, I love
where you
that.
just set
Yep.
up a station and like
Mhm.
you're just going through your routine on each one. Each one's a new putt. Like, just don't try and hit like 55-footers in a row. Like, you already know the answer to the question or the test at that point.
Mhm.
You've got to like set up a station where you're having different breaks and you're like putting a bit pressure on yourself. Don't take as many gimmies from your buddies either.
Mhm.
If you don't accept, if you don't have many material putts from 4 feet where you feel pressure that you have to make
Yeah,
them,
exactly.
you're
Because all of a
never
sudden
going to
you're
get good at
playing in
them.
your member guest or
Yeah.
whatever, and you have to make that. And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Same with like first tee stuff. Like, you have first tee jitters and you're accepting breakfast balls from everyone. How are you ever going to get better at them?
Mhm. Okay. Well, this all makes me want to practice. So let's talk about practice. One or two topics before we get you out of here. So practice. I must be like strange or something because I really don't mind practicing. I enjoy that time. Maybe it's the fact that I have 3 young children at home, but I enjoy like throwing in a podcast and like and maybe you don't like to listen to a podcast while you do it. I don't know, but I like to just be out there hitting balls or get on the putting green, maybe get in the sand. I'm super lucky. I have a nice range that is like literally in my backyard. I just walk across the fairway here and I'm there, which is
That's
awesome.
awesome.
And yeah, if you're in Charlotte, come on by. Would love to have you show me how to play my course at some point. You and Mackenzie can come by and show me how to play.
Yeah, I'll have Mackenzie do it for you. He's a little better than me.
But let's talk about practice. So you talk about avoiding zombie range sessions, which I like that. Tell me how you think broadly about
So
practice.
I think the primary and like, there's all types of research on practice now, but like I'm not a scientist or anything like that. I just know what it feels like not to be engaged in practice and just kind of going through the motions. Like if you want to get better at golf and develop skills, like, just rifling through your 7-iron over and over again or your driver until you build up like a rhythm and some false confidence. Like that's not the question you're being asked on the golf course. Like you only get one chance at it. So I think at the minimum, you have to have a lot of intent on each shot. So basic stuff that a lot of people overlook. Like you watch a tour player practice, like every shot they hit, they have a target. Like that sounds like all too basic, but like
Mm-hmm,
a lot of golfers, and I did too for a long time, they're just kind of hitting over there.
mm-hmm,
There's
mm-hmm.
no intent. Like, how can you get the right feedback on your shot if you didn't have a specific target? So like that's like number one, like be engaged and have a target. Um, and just going through like maybe the routine you would on the course, taking some time to stand behind the ball and to have an intention with whether that's technical or some type of swing thought, whatever you're working on. Hitting, I talk about absorbing the proper feedback, where you struck it on the face, ground contact, how the ball started, curved through the air. And then you take a step back and you absorb that information. You don't just stand over the ball, hit, 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 hit.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Mm-hmm.
zombie stuff. So you're not
Mm-hmm.
learning anything and you're not getting any real feedback. So I have a number of methods in the book that I think can help people, whether that's like random practice, playing performance games, working on your swing tempo, challenging yourself to strike different parts of the face, randomizing ball flights. I'm not against block practice where you're hitting the same shot over and over again to the same target. I just want you to be more engaged in that process, have intention, and take a step back afterwards and say, what happened on that? Was it a good shot? Was it a bad shot? If it was a bad shot, why do I think it was a bad shot? That's what the better players are doing and they're learning and they're adjusting. They're taking the information from the golf course. They're seeing what shots are making them uncomfortable. They're looking at what patterns they have. Am I hitting a ton of tee shots to the right? Am I hooking it more?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're working on that problem in practice. They're having intention on how to solve that problem. And there's a number of ways to do that. You might be getting swing lessons. So I think, if you're going to spend some time working, and if you just kind of want to like let stress out and let your mind drift, like that's okay too. Like I don't want to say like, yeah, I think practicing could just be a good like therapeutic thing in life.
Mm-hmm.
But if your intention is to like really get better, like yeah, you're going to have to engage your mind in this and pay attention. And I think there's a number of different ways to do that. And I try and give different ideas in the book. And there's plenty of other golf coaches who have ideas as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like some of the stuff you had in there about randomized practice. Like I'd liked, get pull out one club and then, either hit it to 3 different targets or hit it with different trajectories. Like I like that idea. Like you had something in there was like hit a 6-iron to 75 yards. You're like, okay, that's not a shot I would ever practice at the range, but I can see a situation where I'm like, there's a low hanging tree in front of me and I need to like punch it out. Like, do I have that shot? Would that be an interesting one to and I think it almost like leads back to like you talked in the book about when you were a kid messing around with this and how to get this club to go this way and just like more play, right? But it gives you
Yeah.
more muscle memory in terms of how these clubs work and what you can do with them.
So yeah, I think one of the things that all great ball strikers have the ability is, and Tiger talks about this a lot, is his hands. Like even at this stage in his career, he's like, I can still use my hands. And what he really means by that is he can manipulate that club face. He can open it. He can close it. He can de-loft it. He can have awareness of what his club face is doing throughout his swing. And you only build that awareness, I think, through a bunch of different types of shots. And I want to make a distinction here is that I prefer players to use their stock shot on the golf course. You hit a fade, stick with it. You hit a draw, stick with it. Don't get fancy. But in practice, you can go outside of that little box. And that's why I say try hitting a 6-iron 70 yards. Try hitting it high, try hitting it low. It's not that I want you to hit those shots on the course. I want you to build the awareness of what your hands are doing and what your swing needs to do to achieve that desired result, because that's ultimately the question golf asks of you. If you're hitting a ton of slices one day, you're going to need to figure out a way to neutralize your swing path and close the face at impact.
Mm-hmm.
And you might only be able to do that if you learned how to hit a hook. That's why I often tell people that's another practice method I have, is doing the exact opposite of your fault.
Yep.
I had a big hook for a year. I got out of it by trying to hit slices.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I wanted to hit a fade on the golf course. It's I wanted to be less into out with my swing path. So I think when you get outside the box and randomize and experiment a bit, not that you need to do it all the time, you are building up internal reference points in your golf swing so that you can manipulate that golf club throughout the swing and, more importantly, at impact. And I don't think golfers practice that way enough. They don't experiment enough. And when you try and do the same thing over and over again, you're not going to build that awareness. Like you need to get outside of that box at some point. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I think that allows you to adjust when you need it. Because every day you're going to step on the golf course and your swing's going to feel a little bit different. And the best players are the ones who can adjust with what they have that day. And that comes through building up skills during practice.
Yep. Makes sense. The one area I think you talked about in the book I thought it was an interesting distinction to make is that when you're on the tee, hitting driver, like that scenario in terms of how you can set up to the ball, all that kind of stuff, that stays the same, right? You're on a flat tee box, you control the height of the tee, all that stuff stays the same. Everywhere else on the golf course, who the hell knows what's going to be happening? And this is why it's great to practice lots of different ways to hit the ball, different trajectories, all this kind of stuff. But I just wanted to raise that point because I thought that was an interesting point you made in the book.
Yeah, it's the only your tee shots is when you have complete control. Hopefully you've got a flat lie. I know some tee boxes don't offer you that. Not every tee box is perfect.
Well, you and I have both played all the public courses around New York City, I think, before. So if you're at like Van Cortlandt or whatever, and playing a 6-hour round, you may not be getting the flattest lie in your tee box.
Yeah, but in a perfect world, you want to, if you've got control of it on the course, you want to exert that control in practice and figure out what's the best setup for you. And with the driver, tee height and ball position will influence things like your club path, that impact interval, your angle of attack. So finding out the optimal, and I have some different methods in the book and how you can figure that out. You want to know that hey, I step on the tee box, I'm going to tee at this height, I'm going to put it there on my feet every time. And I can repeat that because I have control over that. Now with your irons, that's obviously going to be different. You got some downhill lies, some uphill lies, side hills. So you'll have to adjust a little bit. But even with that too, you want to really develop your stock ball position and intention, and then you can adjust based on what lies you're getting on the course. But I think with driver, you're able to repeat that scenario in practice that you will face on the golf course. It's one of the few scenarios you can truly replicate. So why not find out what's best for you?
Makes sense. All right. Last technical question I want to ask you before we get you out of here is impact training. I think I probably was not as aware of just how important, it sounds kind of silly to say, but just how important it is where you're hitting the ball on the face of the club. And so I found myself this weekend out at the range with a can of foot odor spray. Tell our listeners what I was doing and why was that important.
Yeah, in terms of intent and feedback, you want to become a better golfer, like even Tiger talks about this still. It's like hitting it flush, like closer to the center of the face. Like club technology has come a long way, and they've definitely mitigated the ill effects of an off center strike. But with your driver and hybrids and fairway woods, you've got gear effect. So you're towing it, it's going to hook more. You're heeling it, it's going to slice more. So there's directional penalties for not hitting the center of the face. With your irons, you're going to lose a ton of distance. We don't have to worry about gear effect, but you tow, you have that 7-iron that you want to hit 160 and you hit it off the toe, it's going to go 135. You're not going to reach the green. So the biggest problem to solve in golf for most players is just having more centered strike patterns. And a lot of golfers have no idea what it feels like in their hands, like where they hit it on the face and building that awareness. So yeah, it's become way more popular than it used to be. I'm not the only one talking about it. But now, we have someone at Dr. Scholl's. I always say this. Someone in middle management, Dr. Scholl's, like 7 or 8 years ago, was probably like, "Why the hell are we selling more of odor?" And it's just because golfers figured out like that was a great way to just spray the face, and the residue would stay on there, and it would show you where you made contact on the face.
Yeah.
So yeah, very simple way to train is like building awareness. Like first, figure out your tendencies. Are you a heel striker? Are you a toe striker? Maybe it's all over the face. Challenge yourself to obviously strike the center of the face, but like if you're a heel striker, experiment with trying to strike the toe. That's what I still do. And that moves me more towards the center of the face. So you can kind of challenge yourself to hit different parts of the face, diagnose where your tendencies are. More importantly, build that awareness in your hands.
Yeah.
So you know what a toe strike feels like now. So when you feel it on the course, and I saw my driver hook, and oh, that wasn't because of my swing path. That's because I towed it.
Right.
And that's important to know the distinction between the two things. So you wouldn't want to be trying to fix your swing path. It's like, oh, I just struck it on the toe. That's why I missed it to the left so much. Pros still struggle with that. And they have all these drivers with more MOI now that helps reduce the impact of gear effect, but it's still there. So yeah, if you need to spend some time training your strike tendencies, building that awareness, and like you talk about like bang for your buck practice in terms of scores, like that's like top of the list for me.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Like super top of the list. Like do that more than like grinding over a bunch of 5-foot putts. Like that's going to improve your scores dramatically if you start learning to strike the center of the face more.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea too that it's not like you're not like, oh, you have to do this with your swing mechanics to make sure you get there. It's like, tell me what the outcome is that I'm trying to get to, and let me see if I can figure it out. Like, let me see if I can do experimentation.
Then it becomes a question of self-organization and athleticism. Like a lot of golfers can solve that problem without thinking about what their body is doing. They're just kind of organized around that task. And of course, getting lessons. I'm a big proponent of swing lessons. Like, getting technical help on your swing can help you strike the ball better too. Like there's two ways to skin that cat. There's a way you could just challenge yourself and see, can I figure this out on my own? Sometimes if that's a bit harder, you can get help from a coach and invest in that from time to time. But yeah, that's the big question you're being asked in golf. Like, can you strike it closer on the center of the face? Like you answer that question a little bit better, like your scores are going to drop big time. Like the ball's just going to more distance. Everything's better at the center of the face, like better launch angle, optimal spin rates. Like the golf club is doing what it's designed to do. It's going to go the right trajectory, the right distance. Everything good happens at the center of the face.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I can't wait to try that again. I tried it this weekend at the range. I don't feel like I got a full sample set because I had a 3-year-old with me at the time, and he was not allowing me to have a perfectly zen range session. But I got some interesting early data points in that. My irons, I was actually hitting toward the center, so those looked pretty okay. My driver was very much more oriented toward the heel, and
usually people have a pattern.
Okay, and it was super interesting, and I just need to get back out there and try this, but I could not hit it near the toe to save my life. Like I don't know if it is like something mentally that I will reorganize to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and you can mess around with that.
Yeah.
Some people like set up with the ball like literally outside of the toe.
Yeah.
Like just mess around with intentions and setup.
Mhm.
and see like what can I do to like get this thing over there, like and that's a productive practice session
Yeah.
versus just like kind of mindlessly hitting balls. Like you're trying to solve that problem and be creative, and you're going
Yeah.
to figure something out. I promise you.
Yep. Yep. Cool. Well, thank you. It was funny. I was after I read your book, I was like, oh, I wonder if anybody. I was thinking about the fact that how many people are probably buying like foot odor spray for this purpose, and I was like, this could be $1 million idea. I wonder if anybody's just marketing it as golf spray. And I go on
There
Amazon.
is
There are.
someone
Yeah,
has
there
made
are.
strike spray, but I think
Exactly.
still most people defer to Dr.
Yeah,
Scholl's.
I noticed. I just went on Amazon and I was like, oh, there's like 5 people selling like impact spray or whatever. Somebody beat me there.
Don't use tape because it changes your spin rate.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You'll get like flyers, essentially. Your spin rate plummets when you put tape on the face. Like, if you're going to use the tape, like the stickers, like, don't pay attention to how far your irons are going then,
Gotcha.
because it artificially lowers spin.
All right. Well, listen, I could ask you questions for the rest of the evening. We're taping this. We're taping this in the evening, but I will let you go because I'm sure you got a lot of stuff to do. So let's to wrap it up. First, again, I just want to thank you for all your work. I love the books, the podcast, which we haven't mentioned yet. It's the Sweet Spot, right? This is
That's correct.
podcast?
Yes.
Yeah. Sweet Spot. The 4 Foundations of Golf is the book that we've been talking about. You also have a new book out called The Foundations of Winning Golf, which is aspirational for me at this point, but I do have a goal to play in 4 tournaments this year. So I probably need to
I
read
think it
this
could
one.
help you. I think it's really, I wrote it for your Thursday men's league. I wrote it for anyone who's playing a Nassau against their buddy on the weekends. So yeah, it's really
Awesome.
a book. I think most golfers like to compete in some capacity, and I wrote it, to give them kind of like a mindset and a philosophy on how to win in a literal sense, but there's also a lot of other ways to win kind of on that journey too. So the title, The Winning, is a bit of a double entendre.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, I think I tried to make it appropriate for all levels, but when I wrote it, I was really envisioning a player who is playing for a club championship flight,
Yeah.
Nassau
Yes.
matches against their buddies.
Yeah.
Like I know what
Cool.
get nervous. So it's more of a philosophical approach to that. 4 Foundations I would describe more as a how-to book,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say the Foundations of Winning Golf is more of like a mental, like mindset type book.
Yeah, okay, cool. That's awesome. Yeah, because I played in my member the last couple of years, and I mean, usually like in one of the later flights, but we've gotten to like the shootout a couple times.
Oh, nice. Yeah, the shootouts
we
where all the
always
nerves spike.
bomb it. We always bomb it on the first hole of the shootout. We just completely collapse. So maybe I'm thinking your book.
I think you'll get some help in there.
Yeah, cool. Anything else? Where else should we point people to? Because I want everybody to be able to learn as much as I have from you. And we all the iceberg.
The best way, you can follow me on Twitter or X, whatever the hell Elon's calling it these days, at Practical Golf. I share a lot of information there. Instagram, I think it's at practical.golf. My podcast, The Sweet Spot, we have I think we're up to 120 episodes. We have many, many, many hours of this type of information.
Yeah.
And then, my books are the best way. You can kind of support me as a creator. The 4 Foundations of Golf and now the Foundations of Winning Golf. They're both available on Amazon. I have a video course for the 4 Foundations. That's the 4 foundationsofgolf.com. And I have a website, practical-golf.com. So yeah, a few online properties where you can find me.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. I'm going to grab all of those links and put them in the show notes. So if you're listening to this podcast, hopefully we'll make that very easy for you to find. It's just one click away. And I personally can endorse the 4 Foundations of Golf, both the audio and the written book. The audio book was great. I mean, it was super easy to follow. And then there is stuff that you want to see the visual. I think you have like a accompanying PDF, but I just went it's book anyways. I was like, I just want to have the full.
I really didn't want to do the audiobook, but people kept asking for it because I was like, I think this is really a paperback type book or Kindle with all the images. There's tons of images in the book, but people seem to enjoyed
Yeah.
the audiobook, and thankfully some of them end up
I
buying
think
the
you can get
paperback,
a
which
lot. Yeah, I think you can get a
yeah,
lot of value out of
like
it, and it's
the new book has no images in it, and I'm about to literally start recording the audiobook in the coming week.
okay, cool.
So I'll have it out in the next couple of months, I hope. But that I think that book, the new one, lends itself more to the Audible version.
Awesome. Well, you have accompanied me on many drives to work and some flights as well.
Oh
Which is
man,
when
I just keep
consumed
thinking
all
of like
this
putting
information.
people to sleep. God,
Yeah, no.
listen to me drone on about golf for 10 hours.
Well, listen, this is awesome, Jon. So thanks so much, and everybody go check out all of Jon's work immediately. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
All right, there you go, my friends. Jon Sherman. I told you he was good. And if it wasn't clear enough from that conversation, I'm a big fan of Jon's work, and especially his book, The 4 Foundations of Golf. I definitely recommend checking that one out if you want to dive deeper into everything that we discussed today. Also, like I said, I'm going to write up some of my favorite strategies and tactics that I've learned from Jon in my newsletter this week. So if you want my Cliff's Notes version to all of this, head on over to gregcampion.substack.com to subscribe and make sure you don't miss that one. That's it, my friends. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review and tell a friend. That word of mouth is so huge in helping others to find the show. So I really appreciate your attention as always, and I will see you next time.